Hello and welcome to the first module recording for ECM212, Teaching the Curriculum Health and Physical Education 2. I'm going to create a recording of every module. I'm sorry that this one is a little bit late, but this is for Module 1, which is for topics 1 and 2, and those two topics are Australian Curriculum of Health and Physical Education and Individual, Family and Community Values and Beliefs. They are for week 1 and 2. Okay, so topic 1, Australian Curriculum of Health and Physical Education. So we're going to touch on here the national and states policy, ACARA's achievements, particularly in 2013, the Australian Curriculum and the Australian Curriculum and Physical Education, Health and Physical Education Pedagogy, and Culturally Responsive Pedagogy. So if we have a look at the ECM212 in LearnLine, and we go down, you can see what you really should do is make sure you read through that introduction and the national and states policy in terms of ACARA. I fixed up a lot of these links, so they should all be working now. Unfortunately, they weren't. I'm new to lecturing and new to this unit this year, and it was lectured by somebody else, and unfortunately over time links stop working because websites get changed, updated and modified in certain ways. So those links are all working now. What I highly suggest is you click this link to watch this video, which is an introduction to ACARA, which I already had open. Yes. It's very informative in terms of an overview. If you're interested in so the NAP website, so NAPLAN Online, the National Assessment Program, then that link is in there as well. I suggest you just have a quick scroll through there. So there's some other useful links here. So there's a ACARA home website, and then from there you can then get access to a whole bunch of these other tabs. So you've got the About Us, which is the overview. I highly suggest you read through that. You've got the curriculum. You've got assessment, and you've got reporting. From there you can also access the Australian curriculum. I suggest that you do that and check out the Australian curriculum. So for example, from Foundation to 10, it's got Health and Physical Education, and it's broken up into two strands. Those two strands are personal, social and community health, as well as movement and physical activity. So this curriculum was put up for draft consultation in 2013, and then it was then launched in, I think, around April 2014. And that was the year that I'd moved from teaching in a middle school. So I was teaching at Sanderson Middle School and I was teaching PE. I taught there for 7 years teaching PE. Being a middle school teacher, I got the opportunity to teach a whole bunch of other subject areas, in particular ICT, as well as IEU students, so intensive English unit. I got to teach refugees, asylum seekers, which was very interesting, students of all sorts of other diverse backgrounds, as well as Indigenous students and different cultures apart from that. So very, very good experience. But I was a part of the whole process going through the development of the Australian curriculum in terms of health and physical education, but I didn't get to come to fruition because when it was launched in 2014, at the end of 2013, I'd just completed my graduate diploma of psychology, and I moved on to Casuarina Senior College, where I started teaching psychology and child studies, and so I didn't get to ever teach to the Australian curriculum because then from there I moved on, and now here I am today. But inside the personal, social and community health, there's being healthy, safe and active, communicating and interacting for health and well-being, as well as contributing to healthy and active communities. As part of the movement and physical activity, there's moving our body, understanding movement and learning through movement. And I have a lot of opinion on all of these because I also work part-time at the Northern Territory Institute of Sport, and as part of that I was the coordinator as a consultant for a research project called Move More, Learn More. and that program was research with grade 1 students in schools throughout the Northern Territory, but only in the two urban areas of Darwin and Alice Springs. And we tested students who were in intervention schools against students who we put into control schools. So the control school students participated in our research 3 times throughout the year, so halfway through term 1, at the end of term 2, and halfway through term 4. What we found, and the research is still being put together, the data is all still being collated, but what we found through observation was that there was not much improvement in the physical development of those students across the year in the control schools, but of the students who participated in the intervention program that we put in place, there was quite a change. So there was a big difference between the intervention students and the control students, but there was also a big difference within those intervention students in terms of how they developed throughout that year. So they were tested on the 6 foundation moves, so the 6 foundation moves for human movements, in particular in terms of strength development, and they are push-up, pull-up, squat, lunge, bend, and brace. So a bend is like a hinge movement, and if you're familiar with gym exercises, then it was like a deadlift move, but hinging at the hips. And the brace is foundational to the other 5 movements. And the brace is typically it's developed through holding a plank, but it's about getting the positioning right of the shoulder joint so that it's not sinking into the shoulder joint, but actually activating the muscles around the shoulder joint to support the joint, as well as getting the pelvis to sit in a neutral position and not in an anterior tilt like it does in a lot of people. So while we used the plank to develop the brace was foundational to the other 5 moves, and it should be practiced when doing the other 5 exercises. There's actually a 7th, but it wasn't tested because it's a little bit different, and that's rotate, so rotating around through the torso. There's 8 locomotive moves, and the students were also tested on these moves, and they were run, jump, hop, leap, kick, catch, throw, and strike. I said them in the wrong order, which confused me, throw and strike. And with the 6 foundation moves, they practiced them in their classroom as well as in their PE, specialist PE time. And not all schools, by the way, had a specialist PE teacher, but what they had was 3 movement breaks throughout the day. In the intervention schools, those students, the teachers had to do a minimum of 2. There were times when they only did 1 for various reasons. For example, probably usually a bit more than just an assembly. Maybe it was like an event that was happening at the school that day. It might have been Harmony Day, or maybe there was a special assembly where the Navy was coming in, for example. And so then students were out doing other activities after assembly with those visitors to the school and so on. But a high majority of the time, it was done at least twice a day, if not 3 times a day. The teachers recorded how the students went straight after they did it. It was a 5-minute video. The teachers just simply had to put it up. The video was put onto the server. The teachers simply had to put it up and press play. And then the students went about it. Some teachers got really into it and really sort of looked into movement patterns and developing the students' movement patterns, and then took and incorporated that into other areas of learning, as well as at recess and lunch and so on. And some just simply hit play and let the students just move. And so the idea was to get kids moving around more, based on the research there's so much research that physical activity is very beneficial for academic development and academic success. The mind and body works together as one, and so when you're active, then you can then learn more. But the other thing that we really found, it was a very, very effective behaviour management tool, because kids could kind of get that movement. All human beings want to move. Human beings are made to move, and kids especially want to move. They're made to move, and so allowing the students to be able to move throughout the day at regular times throughout the day meant they could be settled in class. So what some teachers found were that students were able to sit on the mat for longer because they were more settled. They'd got that sort of 5 minutes of movement. They got it out of their system, and they're able to sit for longer. They could actually sit on the mat or in a chair with better posture. So they would sit up more straight, they wouldn't slouch as much, and then from the slouching they would then find that students would then start to become irritable and start to become off task, and they start to annoy other students, and having those movement breaks throughout the day prevented that. And so what we found, like one teacher said in some anecdotal feedback, was that she had a student that she would get typically 30 minutes out of the day for him in terms of work. Whenever he did the 5-minute movement break, she would get 30 minutes straight afterwards out of him. So what she started to do at our suggestion was that she started to do the movement breaks more often. So she might do a movement break at the start of the day, a movement break at about the 1 hour period, because most that initial block between the start of the day and recess is about 2 hours. So that kind of transition time between activities or at the top of the hour, whatever it might be, do another movement break for him. She'd then get another half an hour at him, another one after recess, another one halfway through the next two, that next block, and then another one after lunch, and so on. So it was very effective, we found, and so what we did was, apart from just giving kids movement, we tried to sort of kill two birds with one stone and give them movement in terms of movement challenges. So there were some gymnastic moves in there that they did, like L-sits and tabletop bridges and things like that, as well as the 6 foundation moves, so they practiced them. So there was 5 minutes of exercise, 1 minute of exercise for 5 exercises, which totaled up to 5 minutes. So that was very, very effective for students in terms of moving, and that then comes in with underneath the movement and physical activity, moving our body, understanding movement, and learning through movement. So it does actually. The reason why I'm saying this is it does actually reflect the Australian curriculum for health and physical education. Okay. If we go back to... so we've also got, from ACARA, you can get to the NAP website, National Assessment Program. And then this is where they do all the testing for NAPLAN and so on. And then another one is the My School website. So very interesting. I suggest you have a look at this one as well. Go and have a look. Search for... either a school, the school where your children go, if you have children, a school that you work at, if you work at a school at the moment, for example, as an ISA or a tutor or teacher aide of some sort, or if you don't do that, then just look up your old school from when you were a student. So very valuable for you to go and have a look at those 3 websites. Also on there's a link to the Queensland Education Curriculum, and you can have a look at that just to familiarise yourself with other areas. Okay, so ACARA's achievement in 2013. If you have a look at the video further down on here, this one here, so ACARA's achievements in 2013, you can also see from this graph, which I'll talk about in a second. But that video was created at the end of 2013. So at the time, I think it was... geography was up and running, and civic history or something, I'm not too sure. And then the other one, in November of that year, then the other ones, maths and English and so on, started to roll out, and then health and physical education came the year after. I also suggest actually, in terms of, is checking out SACE, so South Australian Certificate of Education, because from the Northern Territory, we utilise this for grade 11 and 12, and just familiarise with yourself with that as well. So learning down to health and physical education. And then you've got child studies, food and hospitality, health, outdoor education, and physical education. So let's have a quick look at physical education. And you'll see there, so with teaching, so I taught grade 11 and 12 psychology and child studies, like I said, and it's very, very strict on what you can and can't teach, and with what you, in terms of the assessments that you give the students and so on. So you've got subject outline, So really valuable if at the moment, like while you're at university, you can familiarise yourself with this now, so that then when you start teaching, if you are going in to teach grade 11 and 12, it's going to be a lot more familiar for you. You might not have as much experience or background knowledge to be able to relate this information back to anything right now, but just by flicking through it and getting an idea, it will make it much more valuable for you. Because I went and taught in a high school, but then went to a middle school and then was back in a high school. And to go into a new area like psychology, I didn't look at that when I was at university, and so it was a huge learning curve. So if you're thinking about teaching health and physical education and you are thinking about going into senior high school, then it's very, very valuable for you to be familiar with what's expected. It will make your role so much easier once you start teaching, because already in your first year of teaching, it is it's a huge, steep learning curve. All right, but I'll let you have a look through that in your own time. As well as the subject outline, you've got all the other stuff in here as well. Past examinations and so on. Alrighty. So an introduction to ACARA can be found at this website. That website is this video here, and it's very, very informative and gives you a great overview of what ACARA does. So ACARA stands for the Australian Curriculum Assessment and Reporting Authority, and they are the independent authority responsible for the development of a national curriculum, a national assessment program, and a national data collection and reporting program that supports 21st century learning for all Australian students. So it's worthwhile considering here, is it worthwhile, is a national curriculum a good idea? Do you think it is? If you would like to leave your response to that on the discussion board, that would be great, and we'll start a discussion on whether you think a national curriculum is a good idea, or if you think it should be left up to the states and territories, which it's been done up until only the last couple of years. And now we have this national curriculum. I feel like it, while the national curriculum is great, there also needs to be the opportunity to be able to have incorporate the unique learnings necessary for the area that you are teaching in. For example, in the Northern Territory, it has a high population of Indigenous people, so Aboriginal Australians and Torres Strait Islanders, as well as other cultures, particularly in Darwin. So it's very important to be able to teach in different ways and different topics, which is all inclusive. But I think the idea of having a national curriculum is a great idea, so that we can make sure that we have high standards at a national level and all students across the country striving for those standards. So what is a curriculum? So a curriculum is just a group of subjects which come together to make up a course. What should the curriculum look like? Consider what you think the curriculum should look like. So do you think that's enough in there in terms of, I've got rid of it now, but in terms of the Australian curriculum, do you think that more needs to be added? There needs to be anything else that's in there? Is there anything that we have that we don't particularly need? And you would have talked about in other previous units on the difference between physical education and physical activity. And I say that physical activity is one component of physical education. So within physical education, from the Institute of Sport point of view, the Northern Territory Institute of Sport talks about 4 pillars. The first pillar is physical competence, so being able to perform all the basic fundamental physical moves that set you up to be able to perform the sport-specific skills. So those moves are the 6 foundation moves I talked about, as well as the 8 locomotive moves. Pillar 2 is running technique and speed development. We don't often teach running technique or how to run properly not just in schooling, but even at athletics clubs. So often when people are teaching running and we're training to get faster, for example, when children go off into sport and they go and learn how to run faster, they train to run faster, it becomes metabolic. And so it's all about, let's just run faster for longer. And there's very little work done on the technical side of things. So there is an actual, the skill of running, just the same as there is the skill of swimming, the skill of bike riding, and the skill of serving in tennis, the skill of shooting in basketball. So it's very important that we teach children how to run properly, because it's a huge part. It's foundational to being a human. Is everybody runs, everybody can run. But what we often see is when children, start to run in terms of how we know it at about the age of 18 months to 2.5 years, which is defined by having a bit of air time between each step. So walking is defined by there's always a part of the foot on the ground at any one time. Whereas with running, there's once the one foot is up off the ground, the other foot leaves the ground, and then the other one touches. So there's the body is off the whole body is off the ground at one time. So there's a bit of air time in between, is what I say. That once we see that and what we see as running, that's when we normally go, oh, my child can now run. And so we then don't really do anything about it. But we really should be starting to develop the skill of running from then on. And the skill of running is all about spending minimal time on the ground, regardless of whether it's in a 20-meter sprint or a 20-kilometer run. It's all about being quick, is all about spending less time on the ground. And so developing, the marching abilities and so on. So, for example, what we talk about with young kids is glass of water and bucket of sand. So for sprinting, lifting the knee up to hip height. So we talk about balancing on one leg and pretending to balance a glass of water on our knee. If it goes too high, then it's going to fall off. If it's too low, it's going to fall off. So having the knee at hip height so you can pretend to balance a glass of water. And then also not leaving the foot floppy, but having the foot pulled up in what's called dorsiflexion. So you're activating particularly the front of the lower leg, but all the muscles through the lower leg as well as the ankle joint. So it's nice and solid when it hits the ground. It's not floppy. But it's all about really the Achilles. So having a nice, strong Achilles is essential for running. And that's why I often say that running starts at the foot and then goes up. From there, we can talk about, again, the pelvis I referred to back in the bracing and doing the planks and every other bracing and every other foundation move of squatting, lunging, pushing, pulling, and so on. But having the pelvis in a neutral position, so not tilted forward, so that everything is working biomechanically correct. So that's all that stuff really needs to be taught, and so that is just pillar 2. Then we've got pillar 3, which is the sports skill development. That's what most people consider as PE, is that it's the development of the sport-specific skills, shooting a basketball, serving a tennis ball, and so on. But you need those foundational strength to be able to perform all of those skills. A lot of those sports include running, so you need to be able to run technically, biomechanically correct, so that they can then maximize that performance in the sport-specific skill. And then from there, it's then pillar 4, which is confidence and resilience, and developing the mental side of sport as well as decision making, creativity, and so on. So that all goes into physical education, and then you've also then got physical activity, which is just simply playing games and allowing children to run around and have fun in either a structured or unstructured environment. So unstructured being recess and lunch, structured being the PE classroom. So they get an opportunity to just play around and you utilize self discovery and learn through just doing. So you have those times of structured and formal teaching and learning in terms of the foundation, the foundational movements, the running technique and speed development, the sport-specific skills, the confidence and resilience, and so on. But then also the physical activity to just have fun, because it's so important that children have a positive experience with physical activity, with PE, physical education, so that they want to then go away and do that later on in life. And developing that physical competence early on is going to set them up for that, because they're going to have the physical capability, the capacity to be able, and the competence to be able to perform all those other physical moves. For example, in running, in the sport-specific skills at that time in their life and later on in life, whether it's in school or out of school, and they're going to be more inclined to then want to partake in sport, organised sport outside of school time. What's the purpose of national curriculum? So as I said, it's about having high standards at a national level for children to work towards. So if we look at that graph that's on LearnLine, you can see there the timeline in developing the Australian curriculum. So the shaping part of it from February 2011 through to August 2012, and then in writing the health and physical education curriculum for the Australian curriculum from August 2012 to September 2013. So you can see there the project commenced in February 2011. The advice paper was developed in October of that year, and then a national forum was conducted. A draft shape paper consultation occurred in April 2012, and then that paper was published in August of 2012. Then it began being written up. The draft curriculum work commenced in August 2012, and this was pretty big. The draft curriculum was then open for consultation from January to April 2013. In July of 2013, the Achievement Standards validation occurred, and then in December 2013, the curriculum was published, so later that year. So you can see there how that timeline relates with the video over here of the CEO of ACARA explaining what achievements occurred during 2013. That was pretty big for the organisation at that time. And then in February 2014, states and territories implemented the curriculum with ACARA's assistance. So these were put in there by the previous lecturer, forget his name. But what I'd suggest is you just copy and paste these. So for example, copy that. And then just have a look at different examples of pedagogy in teaching health and physical education. So you've got that one there, as well as this one, pedagogy in multiple realities, subjective rather than objective. And this one here I was looking at, so it's quite interesting. So get a different idea of, we'll get an idea of different pedagogies to use in teaching physical education. Then this is the previous lecture to Ava. That was on his PhD, culturally responsive pedagogy. I get the impression based on the text that I see on LearnLine that he didn't particularly agree with the Australian curriculum, possibly. I'm not sure, I hope I'm not putting words in his mouth. And with, asking the question, is it culturally responsive in terms of teaching practices using the national curriculum for health and physical education. So you've got there these articles: diverse pedagogy, inclusive pedagogy, and scaffolding. So that ZPD is Zone of Proximal Development, Vygotsky's theory, and that was created in the last 10 years of his career, and is all about it's about the difference between how much somebody can do something without help and how much somebody can do something with help. Moving on to topic 2, individual, family and community values and beliefs. So we'll talk a lot here about values, attitudes and beliefs. So you've got your individual values and beliefs as well as attitudes. And it's important to recognise what your own individual values, attitudes and beliefs are. And we'll talk about what that means in a second in terms of, how you value health and physical education in the curriculum, what your attitudes are about the health and physical education, and what you believe. But just be aware that different students are going to have different attitudes, values, and beliefs as a result of their experiences. So everybody has values, everybody has attitudes, everyone has beliefs, and they are a culmination of what the experiences that person has had in their life, highly influenced by family, in particular parents, but modified throughout time, from schooling, from friends, from social groups. Social groups include sporting groups and so on. So you need to be aware of community values, attitudes and beliefs around health and physical education for the school that you're working in, as well as the school's values, attitudes and beliefs. So does the school, I know working in a middle school, I had an assistant principal who was was almost like the controlling person at the school, and a lot of where the school went and what the school did was a result of what this one person believed. And so luckily it was fairly positive for health and physical education. It kind of went against a little bit of what I believed in, but it's important that you understand and recognize that different people are going to have different attitudes, values and beliefs. And so what I mean by that example is that at the time, and I'm not sure if it's still the same, but the recommendations were that children had to get a minimum of 2 hours of physical activity every week. And if you think about it, that is almost ridiculous. It is so small, 2 hours a week. And that can be done through dance and drama as well as physical education. So children who didn't particularly like physical activity, sport as a way of being physically active, or they didn't like PE, then they could then go and choose drama or art, which is great, because people are all different. But there were different things that occurred in the school that meant that kids could then get out of different things. But so we had to separate the health from the PE, because it meant that children were not going to be able to get the health. They were not going to be able to get enough physical activity if the health was included, and that meant health sat on its own, and the children could choose it or not. So the PE was compulsory, but the health wasn't. As a result, very few kids chose health as a subject they wanted to study, and those who did were already quite healthy and interested in the topic. So kids missed out on a lot of health education, which included sexual education. This was in a middle school, drug education, mental health education, and so on. Okay. So what are values? I said we'd touch on this and explain it. So values are a person's principles or standards of behaviour, and they are what a person deems as important in life. So what you value is a reflection of your standards of behaviour. So how you hold yourself and you get, every time you perform a behaviour or an action, you're demonstrating your values. You get an opportunity every single time a situation arises to demonstrate what your values are. And there's a good video, which is funny, it's a pretty old video, but this here, what are values, explaining what they are, and it looks pretty old, but it's of the guy who sees a camera in this family is at a picnic, and they leave their camera behind, and he gets an opportunity to demonstrate what his values are, and whether he steals the camera or lets them know. And I won't give it away at the end. You know, watch the video. It's only 2 minutes and 25 seconds, but funny being the old video that it is. So you always get an opportunity. And what I like here too is the moral question of it. You know, because the camera, it looks to me like the camera is a little bit expensive for its day and age. But if somebody drops money, do you give it back to them? And I really like the different things you see on social media or on the internet, where people drop money and it's set up, they're filming them to see if they'll give the money back, and where the value is where it really changes. So if somebody drops $5 as opposed to somebody dropping $100, and then all the other different aspects of that come into it, where somebody, from different socioeconomic backgrounds, so somebody who appears homeless and how people respond to them, as opposed to somebody who appears to be, quite well off, dressed in a suit and so on, or very nice dress. And then you've also then got your different cultural influences as well. And religion, and as well as cultural backgrounds. So attitudes are a settled way of thinking or feeling about someone, or feelings about someone or something, which is reflected in a person's behaviour. So you can predict what a person's attitudes are based on what their behaviours are in terms of what they think or feel about someone or something. And then you've got a belief, which is an acceptance that a statement is true or that something exists. So you believe something is true, so you believe something is the way it is, whether that's that something is true or that something exists. But at the end of the day, values is the big one here, and it's about a person's principles or standards of behaviour. So what a person deems as being important, and it's very, very much related to morals. Okay, so ensure at the bottom that you have a look through these questions, that they're a little bit different to what you may have seen if you've been through this before, because I've tried to fix up some of the grammar mistakes and punctuation and spelling, so I'm getting there. There's a lot of text through here on values and beliefs, because that was a previous lecturer's PhD, so there's a lot there. That's why there's so much information, all very valuable. Make sure you answer these questions on the discussion board. So this is for Module 1, your discussion board of Module 1. Please answer these questions in your own thread, but then also hop on and go through and comment on other people's threads and provide further insight, on what you think about what they've said, and provide further insight into your thoughts. So discuss how values are important to health and physical education. What would you do as a teacher when you have a classroom of students that come from various diverse backgrounds with different ways of learning, and how would you value the students? So to touch on that number 2 there, one of the things that I've done previously is when you've got students from various diverse backgrounds, and I think of one class in particular, very challenging class with many diverse backgrounds, getting the children to come and show the other students about their own experiences from their cultural background. So maybe games that they played in their country before they'd moved to Australia, or different things that they do in their culture, which is a bit different to the culture here in Australia, and how that's even different within the culture of Australia. And there probably wasn't a great cohesion amongst that group, and so you have to be very careful that they are cohesive, so that there's no teasing and bullying and negative behaviours that come about. So that was a lesson for me, and that there has to be good cohesion if you're going to do that. But yeah, just consider what you would do as a teacher when you have a classroom of students that comes from various diverse backgrounds with different ways of learning. There's some readings there, so chapter 5 readings, and there's some additional readings which come from the main document, this document here, so the unit outline. If you want to know what they are, these are only additional readings, so do them if you've got the time. But I was asked in the Collaborate session this morning if they were going to be published in the modules, and so I've put them in here. So week 1 you've got 2. I don't know why it's come up with that, but week 1 you've got 2 there. So developmental assets and asset building communities, as well as health information seeking behaviour in adolescence, the place of the internet. And then week 2, taking exercise, cultural diversity and physically active lifestyles. And then the other one is adolescent mental health literacy, young people's knowledge of depression and help seeking. I will then endeavour to put them underneath every module each week so that they're there for you. I will get the recording done for Module 2 this week, hopefully, and that will be for weeks 3 and 4. And then the presentations will be down the bottom. So they were right at the top here, but because I've modified it, I'm just moving them all down to the bottom. I think it just looks neater. And then the recording will be there. So you may have seen this recording from an email out. It'll be an announcement which gets emailed, but they'll always be for further reference underneath each module if you want to come back at a later time and watch these videos. Alright, I hope you have enjoyed this Camtasia recording, and yeah, make sure you head on over to the discussion board to answer those questions there, and then to make sure you're working on assignment 1. If you've got any questions about it, please make sure you've watched the Collaborate session, which you can view now as a recording, and ask your questions in the discussion board underneath here. If you've got questions, ask them in the student cafe there. Alright, thank you.